Hey everyone, and welcome to another patch rundown. This patch came out a few days later than expected, so I'm wondering what could possibly be in this patch. Did Santa come early and gift us some Juno nerfs? Let's start unwrapping this thing. Alright, so first things first, there is now a surrender system in the game. In normal and competitive modes, either team may now surrender during the awakening draft phase between sets if they have lost at least 2 sets in the game, or of a player on their team that is inactive. Inactive in most cases means disconnected from the match, but will also apply to players that haven't made any input in 40 seconds of 1 point. Everyone on the team must vote to surrender for a surrender to occur, not including inactive players. Teams that surrender lose the match and will lose rank as if they had lost normally. So I don't know if I'm alone in this, but I am not a big fan of a surrender system in this game just because I have come back from 0-2 deficits to win 3-2, and I've also had it happen to me too. I'm pretty sure it's happened to everybody. I don't know. I don't like giving up. That's just me. I'm not a fan of it. So for inactive players, I totally am on board with it. I think that it's a good idea to have it in place so that you don't have to just basically score 9 goals while the other team just lets you score 9 goals, or you let the other team score 9 goals, because winning a 2v3 in this game is just almost impossible. I just really don't want this to be seen as an out for players that have poor or low morale and don't even want to try anymore, even though if they actually did try, they might actually win the game, which has happened before. That's just my take on it. There is also going to be an auto match cancel system. If a player is detected as inactive early on into the match will automatically cancel. A player that caused an automatic match cancellation will be penalized as if they had lost the match. This penalty will also apply to players in their pre-made group they queued up with together. Penalties will not be incurred if you or your pre-made member caused an auto match cancel and it was the first time within the last 2 weeks. So I think this is also good. I'm more on board with this than just the pure surrender system. However, I think it is kind of funny to think that you could duo queue with somebody, and if you end up playing with someone that you would rather not play with, all you guys have to do is have one of you guys go inactive, and you get to do this once every 2 weeks per player, and it's basically a free dodge, which I don't know how often that's going to happen, but if it ends up happening or ends up being implemented in the way that I'm reading it, that is going to be an option that players have, so we'll see how that goes. Competitive mode integrity changes. Players above Challenger will no longer be able to enter competitive mode in a pre-made group. They must queue up solo. Players that solo queue will benefit from higher minimum rating gains if they win a match to balance out cases where they had to fill into a less than ideal match. I believe reading that means that this applies to all players and not just very high rated players. And minimum win rating gains reduced at Challenger tier and above. Boy, there's a lot of players in Omega right now that are probably not going to be too happy with this, because now they're going to be at the mercy of having random forwards or random goalies that could be as high as Omega or as low as Platinum. So, I mean, there's not too many people that this means too terribly much for, but it is worth noting that you aren't going to be able to just climb sky high by being an amazing forward duoing with an amazing goalie. There's also a new rank tier called Pro League. Only the top players in each region can qualify to be within the Pro League tier. A player needs to have at least 100 points in the Omega tier to be promoted into the Pro League tier. This basically means that if you played League of Legends, this is like Challenger tier. This is the best of the best of the best. They even say here there's a hard limit to the amount of players that can be in the Pro League. They don't state what that limit is, they just state that there is one. I'm curious to hear what that number is when we find out though. And then there is no longer a multiplier that will weight events more favorably later in the game for the purpose of determining the end of game MVP. So that basically means that if you popped off early on in the game, early in the middle of the game, and the game goes long, it goes to the 5th set, and you did all right in the later sets, but you were huge in the first 2 sets, it's gonna weigh everything that you did earlier in the game just as much as it would later in the game, which I didn't even know was a thing. Moving on, we have Night Market and Oni Village getting some changes. The Oni Village core speed bonus is going up from 75 to 100. That's quite a lot. And the max core speed is going to be 2100 instead of 2000 for, it seems like, Night Market. And Night Market core speed boost will more consistently grant speed up to the max 2100. And it will no longer slow the core down if it's already beyond its max speed. Most frequently happens with energy burst into strike. So if you core flip into the speed boost, it won't slow it down, which I haven't noticed because I haven't seen too many core flips go straight into the speed shrine. But I guess that was a thing. Alright, for striker changes, Amy's glitch glitch pop is getting a range reduction from 980 to 900. I don't think this is going to do too much. If anything, this just means that Amy players are going to have to get reacquainted with the max range of her glitch pop, which I don't think a less than 10% change is going to do too much. Asher barrier beam. Shield no longer occasionally lets the core pass through. That's actually pretty funny. I didn't even know that was a thing. And then they made it so that Era's secondary resolved an issue where quick cast of her secondary in succession via twin drive would not correctly apply the full duration of the buff. That's interesting. Again, this is another thing that I didn't even recognize, and I play quite a bit of Era. Juliette, her ult is getting a bug fix. Staggered targets getting hit by the light hit portion will no longer be able to evade before the final hit. Well, this is a bug fix? Because that sounds like a buff. This basically means that if Juliette uses her ult on you and you did an elusive before that, you're stuck in her vortex of punches and are going to be hit by her final strike. This is actually insane. This is basically a buff to Juliette of all people. I don't understand this at all. I'm curious to see how long this lasts before Odyssey potentially backpedals and is like, you know what? Buggy version of her ult is the correct way that her ult should interact with opposing players, because this makes counterplay for her ult really, really difficult. You basically just have to predict when she's going to ult you. Rasmus is getting his ult cooldown lowered by 2 seconds from 20 to 18, and it is now considered a creation after it enters its empowered state. That's going to be interesting to see how big that you can actually get his hook to be. I'm very curious to see how many more times that they're going to buff Rasmus, because I thought he was very, very good for a while. He's just harder to grasp than other strikers, so people just don't gravitate to him as often. That's just my guess. We have a slew of nerfs for Octavia's secondary. Her cooldown is increasing from 16 seconds to 18 seconds. The base duration is reduced from 2.5 to 2 seconds. The haste gain per second reduced from 2.5% to 2%. Fixed a bug where Octavia would use a random player's buff duration enhancement stat instead of her own to extend the duration of flow state. Random player's buff. That means that it could have been from her team or the enemy team. So if somebody in the game besides Octavia had cast to last, it's possible that she could actually use their cast to last. I know they're former Riot devs, but this is some classic Riot spaghetti code if I've ever seen it. Honestly, I think these nerfs are fine. I think Octavia picked into the right situation is still amazing. I think she's still S tier, to be completely honest. This just means that you actually have to be good with her, because if you do not use her secondary and get really good value out of it, you're going to be kind of worthless for quite a while. All right, Vice, Power Chord, a bug fix. Recharge time is no longer unintentionally increased to 8 seconds with prime time. Always 7 seconds now. Okay, so it's like actually a slight mini buff, if anything. Kind of surprising that this is all that's here, because I strongly believe that Vice has the higher carry potential of the two Oni sisters. But as someone that's been playing a lot of Vice, I'm not really complaining about this one. And then Centauro, they gave him a quality of life change so that he has an indicator for his secondary that shows the full area that he'll hit instead of the location of his dash. That's actually very nice. His special, if a singular enemy is staggered within the area during the special, they will be knockback locked until the final hit. So that basically means that you can't knock back anybody that's locked inside of his ult, which if anything is a slight nerf, but I think it's honestly fair. Bug fix. Hopefully no longer falls off the map while in the middle of his special. Hopefully? Again, I didn't even know this was a thing, but the fact that they put hopefully instead of this is fixed is funny to me. For gear, pummelers, speed on striker advantage increased from 15% to 20%. Pummelers has been changed and now it's been buffed. I mean, I would argue that it's 2 buffs. It's looking like a pretty good option for any brawlers out there that want to get KOs and capitalize on the man advantage. There's a couple bug fixes for aerials, bulk up, and peak performance. Prime time, primary ability hits 10% harder. It's now only going to hit 5% harder. Super surge, dash, blink, and haste abilities hit 20% harder. It's going up to 25% harder. I mean, yet again, another Zentaro buff. He is easily the best user of super surge, but this buff might actually make it a better option for other strikers than it was before. And then we have rotated out awakenings. We have adrenaline rush, stagger swagger, sting Swinger, and Unstoppable. Okay, so yet again, another buff to Juliette. Unstoppable is probably the single best awakening that you can take to defend yourself from a Juliette that's just headhunting and looking to kick punch you if you're too close to the edge of the map. Stagger Swagger being taken out for the rotation also helps her. Not to mention the Pummeler's buff as well. I mean, wow, if Juliette is not banned and you're good with her, be prepared to take some names, because there's really not a whole lot that is going to stop you from just wrecking havoc in just about every game. And we have new awakenings. We have energy awakenings. First, we have Egoist. Evades refund 5 energy, 15 from energy bursts. Reaching max energy grants 75% speed for 8 seconds, reducing the 5% speed while you remain at max energy. That one sounds very powerful. Catalyst. Gain 50% more energy from dealing hits. Being hit generates 3 energy, 1 for light hits. Fire Up. Gain 10 energy on round start. Casting energy burst restores 30% of max energy to other allies and speeds up your whole team by 40% for 5 seconds. That one sounds nuts. And lastly, Reverberation. Gain 250 max stagger and 0.8 cooldown rate per 100 max stagger. So for Catalyst and Reverberation, I would have to experiment with those to see what their potential really is. But Egoist and Fire Up sound very, very powerful. Lots of speed boosts, lots of energy restoration for more elusive and more core flips. I think they're both going to be great pickups. And lastly, we have some miscellaneous bug fixes, but honestly, nothing truly worth mentioning or talking in depth about. Anyways, that's everything. My biggest takeaway is Juliette surprisingly being buffed with her ult bug fix, quote unquote, and Unstoppable being removed from the awakening rotation. The energy awakenings are also very interesting, and I'm intrigued to see how they affect the game and potentially the meta. What do you guys think? Did anything else really stand out for you? Let us know in the comments down below, and we'll see you all in the next video.